Hi, True Avatars, and welcome to your Queer Video Game Podcast. This is episode 28, and I am your host, Zoe Wild. I am a transgender and bisexual woman, and my pronouns are she, her. For the first half, it's just me to cover the last couple weeks of headlines that I've missed. I've been pretty busy the last couple weeks with various podcasts. We did a bonus episode a couple days ago, so I just kind of want to get through the news this week. With regulars and guests and all that, it takes a little bit longer. But the headlines this week are pretty exciting. They announced the release date for the Zelda movie. GameStop is making some major not-so-good changes. There's a follow-up on the Life is Strange Double Exposure Social Impact Award story from a couple weeks ago, and tariffs are about to hit the US gaming industry at hard, including the freshly revealed Nintendo Switch 2, which we did discuss in the previous bonus podcast, which you should go check out. It's episode 27.5. I highly recommend it. It's very exciting and went on a lot longer than I thought it was going to. And if the headlines this week weren't already exciting enough, in the second half I have an interview with Endellion, one half of the Zorkie Studios development team. So back in episode 24, Ekami and I discussed a bunch of upcoming queer games in the Steam Next Fest. Among all those amazing games was a very interesting one called Quality Dreams, reasonably priced. The game, known by its shorthand QDRP, is a visual novel about a dystopian future wherein you work at a body mod shop, interviewing potential customers who want body mods. It's quite a layered game, even for a demo, and we're going to get into it quite a bit later, obviously, but if you want to hear more of our thoughts, I highly recommend heading back to episode 24 for more on Quality Dreams, reasonably priced, plus a bunch of other exciting queer LGBTQ plus indies. And there's also a demo on Steam for QDRP, which I also recommend you check out. It only takes an hour to play, and it even has achievements, which is pretty cool. Anyway, all that is to say, I will have Endellion, or Endy for short, on the podcast later for an in-depth interview on their inspirations and insights into QDRP's development process, so please stick around for the second half of the episode and check that out. Alright, before I jump into the news, I have a few quick favors to ask. If you like this podcast, please consider leaving a comment or review on your preferred podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. True Avatars has only been rated a handful of times across all the platforms, and I've started receiving a handful of comments and reviews. Leaving feedback not only helps with visibility, but it helps me know what you like and don't like about the podcast, so I can improve it as I find my footing. Also, please follow True Avatars, a queer video game podcast, on social media. There are accounts on Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and YouTube at True Avatars, and you can also find the podcast on the official website, trueavatarspodcast.com. That's all one word, trueavatarspodcast.com. Alright, True Avatars, shall we jump right into the headlines? So this first one I am really excited about, even though it's kind of a minor piece of news. The live-action Legend of Zelda movie has an official release date. So Nintendo's new app, Nintendo Today, which is basically a glorified calendar, has also been slowly revealing certain news tidbits, and one of them was kind of a big deal in my opinion. So we've known for a while that Nintendo was working on a live-action movie based on the Zelda series, but they haven't said much until now. So we do know now it's coming on March 26, 2027, and that's less than 2 years away. And 2 years might seem like a long time to some people, but it's going to take a year or more to shoot and edit the movie, so that means we should be hearing news of casting this year, since production will have to start by the winter. We already know that it's going to be directed by Wes Ball, who recently helmed War for the Planet of the Apes movie, and before that the Maze Runner movies. And we know that the writer is Derek Connolly, who wrote Jurassic World, Detective Pikachu, and Kong Skull Island. We also recently learned that it's going to shoot in New Zealand, just like the Lord of the Rings movies, so it should be visually spectacular. I really don't have too many thoughts just yet. I'm mostly hoping that for Link and Zelda, they cast unknown actors. I know Nintendo's been very celebrity focused, especially with the Super Mario Bros. Movie. So I have a fear they're going to cast Timothée Chalamet as Link, and maybe even ask Anya Taylor-Joy to play yet another Nintendo princess for Zelda. And I have no issue with these actors. I love Timothée Chalamet. I loved him in Dune. I think Anya Taylor-Joy in The Witch, she was brilliant. But I just think anyone you've seen before in a movie brings a lot of baggage with them to a character. And I think Zelda and Link need to be kind of a clean slate because, especially Link doesn't have a lot of personality or character in the games. And I know there's like little tidbits here and there of who Link is, especially in different versions of each Zelda game. But you're projecting yourself onto a lot of these characters, particularly Link, when you play these games. So I really think that if they want to build up a new interpretation of these characters, characters with personality, especially Link, like I've been saying, getting unknown actors who've never been in movies before, or at least well-known movies, would be their best bet. And then we don't have any preconceived notions of who they are as characters going into it. But again, like I said, Nintendo's been very celebrity focused, and I think they're going to want celebrities to kind of sell the movie to general audiences. And so I just hope that whoever they do get is talented and brings something to Link and Zelda that we haven't seen before in the games. Another interesting detail that I haven't heard a lot of people talking about is that this movie is going to release 1 week after Sonic the Hedgehog 4 releases in theaters. So we're going to see yet another Nintendo versus Sega battle, and for the first time, it's going to be at the box office. So I do think these movies are releasing too close together. And I think Sonic is going to have to move because I don't see Nintendo budging on the release date. They're Nintendo. It's like how Disney puts an Avengers movie out on a certain weekend, and then like if someone else has got another big movie coming out that weekend, that movie has to move. Some companies just don't seem like the type to balk, and I really do think that Sega and Paramount are going to have to move Sonic. But 2026, if they're going to bump the release date up instead of delaying Sonic 4, 2026 is really busy, especially the holiday season. There's so many big tentpole movies coming out. It's like a lot of stuff that's kind of been delayed from the pandemic and just in general, especially with the writer's strike that happened. And I think the actor's strike too. Were there 2 strikes? Was it that wild? Anyway, there was a strike last 2 years ago that delayed a lot of productions, and a lot of them got pushed into 2026. And that's when a lot of them are coming out. And there's also a lot of big animated movies for kids and families that are going to compete with Sonic and Legend of Zelda. So I think if Sonic's going to move, they're going to have to push it into the summer. I don't particularly feel comfortable waiting longer. Like, I don't want to wait longer for Sonic 4 because I really want to see that movie. I think just knowing Sonic's track record, I think Sonic 4 has a better chance of being good than the Zelda movie does. Mainly because I thought the Super Mario Brothers movie was kind of shit. Aesthetics aside, I mean, they got the branding of the games right and everything, but like the visuals and just the vibe, but the story was absolute crap. So I think the Zelda movie has a severe risk of being just as terrible as the Mario movie, especially given that one of the producers is also known for all the terrible Spider-Man movies. So it does make me a little worried. But that said, I think Sonic is going to have to move into the summer if they're going to push. And I do think Sonic is going to be cannibalized. And this isn't like a running leg pun with Sonic, but I think Sonic's legs are going to be cut off the next week as soon as Zelda comes out. No one's going to want to go see a Zelda movie unless, of course, it looks like people like from the outset it looks bad and it doesn't make any money. But I do think it's Zelda. If Nintendo gets the iconography right, like they did with Mario, it's going to do very well, even if it's story-wise not very strong. So anyway, currently though, Sonic 4 is still set for March 19th, 2027, with no plans for a delay. So maybe I'm overthinking this. Who knows? Maybe they're not going to delay it. I don't know. And a couple weeks ago, I also mentioned that Game Informer was teasing a return, and they are officially coming back. So I did mention that there were hints that Game Informer, the old and famed gaming magazine and news outlet that was potentially being revived after GameStop closed it down last summer, it turns out those hints were true. It's coming back. The entire team is returning, which is pretty cool. So the entire team that was there on the day they were laid off last summer, they've all been rehired. But for anyone who doesn't know anything about Game Informer, or maybe doesn't know why this is important, Game Informer is a storied and important news outlet. They've been around since 1991, so longer than IGN. I think they're the longest surviving news outlet in the games industry. I could be wrong about that. I didn't look too deeply into it, but they've been around so long that I know people have their thoughts about IGN as well. But if we lost IGN, I think it would also be a big deal because IGN's just been around so long, and they have such a storied legacy in the games industry. It would be a pretty major blow, and also like losing E3, which we did lose, unfortunately. So it's just kind of sad to see stuff like this go, but it's also great to see stuff like this come back too. So maybe there's some hope for E3 yet, but Gunzilla Games bought Game Informer back from GameStop, and they're essentially letting them, like the rehires, letting them run the whole outlet independently, which is great. So Game Informer will be Game Informer as we've known it. They also said that the website and the print magazine are definitely coming back with more news to come. Speaking of GameStop, they're closing a bunch of US stores and investing into Bitcoin. So if that makes you stop and say, Zoe, what the fuck? That would be a completely normal reaction to something that, yeah, sounds pretty fucked up. So this news comes from IGN, but basically GameStop hasn't confirmed the number of stores they're closing, just that they'll be doing it sometime this year. They're also investing in Bitcoin, and they didn't really say why, but obviously they think it's going to help keep them in business. Obviously getting rid of Game Informer and selling it off and then investing in Bitcoin and then closing a bunch of stores is definitely the way forward for a game store known for selling physical video games. I have my opinions, like I said, on GameStop and their business model. I've never really been a fan of the way the trade-ins work. I've never really been a fan of, in recent years, of how mostly physical video games have left their stores and it's like a wall of Funkos and random backpacks and stuff. But this is bad news. The store is closing. Forget the Bitcoin stuff. This is bad news for a variety of reasons. But the first one, and this is the less important one, is that this is another indicator of the decline of physical media, which always makes me sad. but also, and this is much more important, is that employees are going to lose their jobs. So again, more layoffs in the games industry. It's getting exhausting. I'm sure it's been exhausting to a lot of people for a number of years, and it has been for me, but I'm just sad to see it happen. And the employees who are going to lose their jobs don't know which ones they are. So obviously every single employee right now is affected, wondering, do I have a job this year? Do I have a job in 2026? What's going on? So maybe they change their mind. Maybe the investment into Bitcoin helps to turn things around. I don't know. But yeah. And unfortunately, the loss of jobs does not stop there, since Tomb Raider studio Crystal Dynamics is also laying off some staff, and this comes from Video Games Chronicle. They have laid off 17 staff members and said that it just had to do with realigning their quote-unquote current business needs and the studio's future success. So they said it wouldn't affect their plans to develop and release the next Tomb Raider game, which has been in development since they parted ways from Square Enix and were purchased by Embracer Group. So I really do hesitate to analyze layoffs again, since my opinion is largely unchanged. Layoffs are unfortunate, and they're probably going to continue since the influx of cash the pandemic brought has dried up, and games continue to bloat in the development stages. So all I can say is that I'm glad the number of laid off staff is like a relatively small number, aside from seeing like numbers like 300, 400, 500 people have been laid off from X major studio. So 17 people is still a small amount, but it's still disappointing to see any number of people laid off. And I do hope the affected staff are able to find work elsewhere, and quickly. I actually have one more layoffs-related news story, and this one is a little bit stranger, and please forgive the pun, since this story is also a follow-up to a previous Life is Strange-related news story from episode 26. So you may recall that I discussed the news that Life is Strange Double Exposure won the Social Impact Award at the GDC a few weeks ago, but nobody was there to claim the award because all the employees who could have claimed it were unfortunately laid off. So some of the laid off employees did eventually go up to claim the award, but now Deck 9, the company behind Double Exposure, has taken back the award from the devs in question. So taking back the award, obviously it makes sense that Deck 9 would want to take the award back since it's technically theirs, but it is beyond hilariously fucked up that they weren't there to claim it, forcing the devs they laid off to claim it themselves. It's just a messed up situation, and when I say hilarious too, I don't mean hilarious in like a haha, this is like really funny, everyone nudge each other's shoulders. It's like weird funny, you know? Like it's Deck 9's fault in the first place that the situation ended up the way they did, and I think it's scummy that they took the award away after fucking up so badly. Why didn't Deck 9 send anyone in the first place, or let GDC know to hold on to the award until they could send someone? So I hope the people behind this decision felt as silly as it all looks, because it was deeply unfair to the devs they laid off. And to make matters worse, one of the devs was actually in the audience at the GDC Awards, but wasn't even given the chance to go on stage in the moment the award was presented. So from the Aftermath article, which does include some ableist language, and I apologize for that to your avatars, but the quote reads, "On the night of the GDC Awards, I was in the audience, sitting in the section meant for the general public," narrative designer Giselle Francis told Aftermath. "I was unaware that anything I had worked on had been nominated and had kind of went on a whim. When we won the award for social impact, and presenter Jay Justice announced that the team was unable to be here this evening, I felt like I was going insane because I was right there. I was stunned and confused and hurt and angry. No one had told me anything. No one had given me the choice. If they had, I would gladly have gone on stage to accept the award." Francis has publicly taken issue with the way publications and pundits framed the moment because, well, she's not quote-unquote no one. "So often, Black people are erased from our accomplishments and from the conversation," she said on Blue Sky. So end quote from Aftermath. It's really such a disappointment because no matter how you feel about the final product of Life is Strange Double Exposure, the game is very progressive and inclusive, and the former devs do not deserve to be treated this way, especially ignoring a Black woman in the audience who was there to claim the award despite also having been laid off. So, anyway, the Entertainment Software Association, known for creating and organizing E3, is introducing a new program called the Accessible Games Initiative. From their website, the About page reads, and I quote, "The idea for Accessible Games Initiative was first developed by Electronic Arts, Google, Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony Interactive Entertainment, and Ubisoft. Our goal is to improve players' gameplay experiences by providing clear information about the accessibility features available in video games. Video game companies have teamed up to create a set of tags to help people identify accessibility features in games. The Accessible Games Initiative tags are available for all video game companies to use on their game product pages, digital storefronts, and digital catalogs." So end quote. It does seem like companies such as Nintendo are including these accessibility tags on their storefront, so gamers can determine what kind of accessibility features will be included in a game. First up, this is a good thing. Anything that makes accessibility more obvious and accessible in general, like that sounds kind of funny too to say, it makes accessibility more accessible. But it's true. This is a good thing. But it also does seem like, especially in Nintendo's case, it's Nintendo of America leading the charge and not Nintendo proper in Japan, which suggests to me that this isn't some new company-wide movement to add more accessibility to their games in the future, but simply something the American side can include after a game's release. I also imagine the same is true about Sony, given that the ESA is a Western organization with minimal influence in Japan. So, if anyone's hoping for, new accessibility features in upcoming Nintendo games, that does remain to be seen. That doesn't mean they're not going to do it, but this is no indicator of that fact, if they're going to do it at all. I mean, I have my doubts about Nintendo, and I did mention previously in the bonus episode that we just did that Nintendo's accessibility leaves a lot to be desired, and I'm going to kind of elaborate a little bit further down here, and I'm just going to talk about this accessibility program for a minute here. I won't list all the tags, but the tags are broken up into the following categories: auditory, gameplay, input, and visual features. And I counted, I think, around 20 to 30 tags or so. I loosely counted. I was hoping for more, but the fact that these are here at all and available on digital storefronts is a really good thing, especially since most digital storefronts leave a lot to be desired in the first place. So, but basically it gives you the ability to see what features a game has before you buy it. Even if all that information could be found online beforehand, like I said, having it accessible on a storefront page, you don't have to open up your phone, open up a laptop, open up another browser window and see, oh, is this game I want accessible? Or does this have the features that I need to be able to let me play this game? And again, I will always say this, but accessibility benefits everyone and hurts no one. So even if a feature isn't designed for you, I encourage you to use it, because the more people who use these features, the more likely they are to be included in future games, and the more people who need these features can play more games. So like I said, in the bonus episode, I did mention that PlayStation and Xbox have adaptive customizable controllers, which gives players better control over how they can actually lay out a controller. So adaptive controllers are basically fully customizable controllers where you can decide where the buttons are placed. PlayStation came out with one, I want to say 2 years ago now. Maybe it was last year. And then I think a few years before even that, Xbox had theirs come out. But Nintendo doesn't have one at all. And these are the three big consoles, right? Not speaking for PC, I'm not sure what options are available on PC, but given that anyone can kind of develop for PC, it's not a walled garden, there's probably stuff there too. But Nintendo doesn't have anything, despite being like a child-friendly, consumer-friendly, at least in appearance, company. So I really do hope Nintendo has something planned for an adaptive controller. They did in the Switch 2 Direct highlight that they're going to have button remapping as kind of a main feature in their games at the console level. So it means like, hey, if you want to reprogram the A button to come at the B button or whatever, to act as the B button, you could do that, which is great. And it's a huge step forward for Nintendo especially to do this. But I do hope that, again, they have an adaptive controller in the works, because I think that's important. Okay, True Avatars, I've kind of been breezing through the news here. It's been a long week, but this is the final headline here. American tariffs are finally officially affecting gamers, US gamers, and it doesn't just include the Switch 2. So this is kind of a double-edged headline here, because I found two sources here. The first was Nintendo has officially delayed the start of pre-orders in the US for the Nintendo Switch 2, which was originally supposed to start on April 9th, so 2 days after this podcast comes out. They haven't said when pre-orders will start, but they did say that the console is still due to release on June 5th, as originally announced. So they've presumably done this because they have to figure out how much the console is going to increase in price, because of the tariffs that will ultimately be paid by the end consumer. It's not a cost that Nintendo's going to eat up, and maybe they will partially, who knows? Like, we just don't know. I personally doubt it, but you never know. Maybe Nintendo does a good thing. But Nintendo mainly manufactures in China and Vietnam, two countries that Trump has imposed tariffs on. And sure, yeah, it kind of sucks that the Switch 2 is going to be affected for American consumers, but it's not just going to be the Switch 2. It's going to be across the board. So Aubrey Quinn of the ESA, we talked about the Entertainment Software Association in an earlier news story here, has made a statement saying that these tariffs will affect all American gamers negatively, not just future Switch 2 players. She said, and I quote, "We really are at this point just watching and trying not to have knee-jerk reactions. Because we don't think what President Trump announced this week is the end of the story, but what was announced this week and the tariffs as outlined, we do expect these tariffs will have a real and detrimental impact on the industry and the hundreds of millions of Americans who love to play games," Quinn says. "And so our goal is to work with the administration to work with other elected officials to try to find a solution that doesn't damage US industries, US business, and also American gamers and families. End quote. So, just to put this into perspective for you, most of the physical gaming things you own or like to buy are all made outside the US. So discs, they're made in Mexico. Cartridges are made in Asia. I know Nintendo specifically manufactures their cartridges in Japan. Consoles are made in Asia. Controllers are made in Asia. And sure, some games are developed in the US. And as far as I can tell, digital games won't be affected, at least for now. But so many games are made outside the US, even a lot of games from American companies. So Star Wars Outlaws and Dragon Age: The Veilguard, for example, pretty sure they were made in Canada. And 99% of Nintendo's games are developed in Japan. I think they have one studio, Retro, in the US, and I think they have one studio called Nerd in Europe. But aside from that, I think they mainly do all their development in Japan. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is this is starting to get as murky as it is awful. And if Trump is really as pro-US production, making everything in the US as he says he is, I wouldn't be shocked if his attention turned to only allowing US-made video games to be sold there too. So it sounds pretty wild to make that leap, but 6 months ago, I never would have guessed how quickly the US has devolved into a dictatorship. I think we only need to look to other countries to see how isolated their society and thus their creative content is for a preview of what could happen in the US one day, very soon if we're not careful. And when I say very soon, I mean a lot sooner than we expect. But for the problems facing us this week, if you want console and game prices to come down, you know who to blame, you know who has the power to fix this, and you know who to turn to. And this time, it isn't the game companies. It's a fascist dictator hell-bent on tanking the economy, likely so corporations can buy up the entire country for themselves. You want to switch too? You want cheaper games? Get protesting, and always remember to exercise your right to vote, true avatars. So, I know that was kind of a heavy headline to finish off on, but those are this week's headlines. I'm all done, and after a short musical interlude, I'll be back on with Endellion to discuss their upcoming visual novel, Quality Dreams, Reasonably Priced. Hi True Avatars, I'm back, and joining me is Endellion, who also goes by Endy. Endy is queer, non-binary, and goes by they, them. Endy is one half of Zorkie Studios, the Canadian duo behind the upcoming queer visual novel, Quality Dreams, Reasonably Priced. It's so nice to have you on. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah,
no, I'm so excited to have you on. Ekami and I talk, Ekami played your game first. We kind of divided and conquered the games from Next Fest we were going to play. And Ekami played your game, and she spoke so highly of it, I had to go and play it too. And I finished it, I inhaled it, I devoured it really quickly. I think I almost sped through it. It was so good. But for anyone who hasn't played Quality Dreams Reasonably Priced before, that's understandable because it's not out yet. But there is a really cool demo on Steam that I highly recommend you check out. The visual novel is about a person named Jin who works as a consultant, called a Psychline, at a body mod shop in the dystopian future. Jin uses all pronouns, by the way. So your job as the player, as Jin, is to interview clients to figure out who they are, what body mods they want, and why they want them, so you can make an appropriate recommendation, whether that's an approval, an upsell, or a straight-up declining their request. The demo features a transmask client as well. There's so much more to the game than I can possibly describe right here, so I do recommend going to check out the Steam demo, and also going back to episode 24, where Ekami and I discussed it in more detail. So, Andy, with all that out of the way, I like to kind of open with an icebreaker question for all my guests, and that is, what is your favorite video game?
Yeah, I've got two. I'm very bad at picking. So the first one is a Taiwanese game called Devotion by Red Candle Studios. It's kind of like a horror narrative game, some light puzzles, a lot of walking around with some time travel thrown in. And I don't want to say a lot more because it'll spoil it, but it's like if the Silent Hill PT was made into a full game, but like deeply rooted in Taiwanese culture. And it's really beautiful. And the other game is Hypnospace Outlaw by, I can't remember the studio right now, but it's set in an alternate world where instead of getting the internet on our computers, you go to the internet in your sleep wearing a special headband, and then it just like pulls on that amazing early internet aesthetic with like how the whole game looks and all the sites in it, and you're playing a content moderator who needs to go through and hit everyone with copyright strikes. So very different games, but I love them both very dearly.
Those both sound really, really fun, actually. I was looking them both up while you were talking, and for the record, the developer is called Tendershoot, it looks like.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
No problem. No, but when you said PT, my mind was like, oh, yes, I have to go play that. And then you said Taiwanese culture, and I'm like, this sounds amazing because PT like looked really fun, but it also was very white people, I guess is the best way I can put it. Like it looked like white people horror because there was so little to the demo because it's like a 10-minute demo, right? So those sound very interesting. And then Internet in Your Mind, that sounds really cool. It sounds like something you're doing in your game too, which is very like this kind of like weird techno future.
Yeah, a little bit. I guess like if a couple things were different and then extrapolating from there.
Yeah, it's just maybe it's just the vibe too. So jumping into the questions I have here for you, my partner and I love the ghost mascot in your logo. I know this is an audio podcast, so listeners, go check out the logo. It's very adorable. It's just this cute little like yellow orange ghost. I was wondering if you could tell me more about them and what the name Zorkie Studios means.
Yeah. So the story behind both of them is a little bit silly. For the ghost, I can't remember exactly why, but I needed business cards in a rush. And for fun, I had kind of just made like 20 to 50 different logos in Canva, just because sometimes you're goofing around with graphic design, super relatable hobby. And I just picked one and put it out, and it was Zorkie with the ghost, but it was a different ghost. And then when we were properly setting up things for Quality Dreams Recently Priced, we realized we couldn't use that ghost. And Nez was like, that's all right. I'm going to make us the best ghost possible. And I said, you do it. And I'm so in love with our little ghost, actually. So it kind of was just a series of silly happenstances, but both of us just really like the ghost. And then for why it's called Zorkie, it's also kind of similar. I don't remember how, but I was looking at old cameras, and one of the old Soviet cameras is called Zorkie without the E at the end. So I guess in Russian it'd be probably like Zorkie, or something similar to that. And I just liked how it sounded a lot. It sounded very like cute and light, but also kind of like fun and like mischievous in a bit of a way. And I said, hey Nez, what do you think about this? And she was like, yeah, okay. And so that's how it kind of all ended up together.
It's really cute. And I think the name, even though if the ghost isn't called Zorkie, I think the two go hand in hand. It sounds like a silly way to say dorky almost.
Yeah.
That's why I like it too. And the ghost is just really adorable. Like he's a bit of a derpy kind of character. So
yeah, we were kind of like going for that vibe, like very like playful and sweet.
For sure. It contrasts a little bit with your game for sure, but I think it's really
That's
cute.
a fair point.
But that said though, I think it represents you and Nez very well, at least from what I know of you two. So I think it's a good choice.
Oh, thank you.
Speaking of Nez, how did you meet and decide to start making a game together?
Yeah, we met through also, I guess, a series of happenstances. I shortly, I can't remember if it was in my last year, if it was when I was graduating, decided to do the 2020 GitHub Game Off. And someone had happened to post like, hey, if you want to join a team, like I'm looking for like blank positions. And I messaged that person, and Nez also messaged that person. And so did like, oh, we were a really big group. It was like 16 people or something, like not what you want for a game jam. And it was a little bit of a disaster month. It's a month-long game jam. But we ended up coming out with something that was a lot more successful than any of us had expected. It's called Bet the Farm on Itch.io, if anyone is curious to play made in 1 month little farming card game. But Nez did 100% of the art for it, and I was doing game design, and we were talking a lot for a lot of reasons and realized we just enjoyed working together. So after that project finished, we decided to make a small, or what was originally going to be a small portfolio project. And through a mix of scope creep and us going like, well, what if it just was a full game that we made together? That would be pretty fun. It kind of ended up growing, and then we both kind of decided to like hunker down and like focus on this as like a trajectory towards doing more projects together, I guess, a stepping stone towards a future making more and more games together. But yeah, that's I guess the shorter but still long version.
Well, it seems like a good match because I think the art is gorgeous. I think the aesthetic of the game works really well, especially with the story. It's got this like very kind of like, I don't want to say dirty in a negative sense, but like the world looks kind of like a little grungy, but still like clean and cute. Which just juxtaposes nicely with the story, which is also kind of like, it's got these grimy undertones to a lot of the elements of the story and the characters, but also like this charm and just like humanity, this humility to it, especially like trying to save the rabbit.
Yeah, we actually like iterated on the art style quite a few times. If you go back into some of our older social media stuff, you'll see like the game in like completely different art styles a few times. We swapped things around. I think Des did at least almost 2 like entire redraws of a lot of the characters and expressions before we settled on like the current design. And it was a lot of work, and we probably could have spent a bit more time figuring out at the beginning, but I'm so happy where we ended up with it. And I do think that it fits very well, and that was through a lot of conversation and trying and not exactly landing at first.
No, that's awesome. I actually saw one social media, I think it was a YouTube short where you were going through the design iterations for Ocean, the transmask character.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the various iterations, and I think they all looked great, but the one you settled on definitely suits the tone of the game, I think anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
So moving it back to you specifically, I saw that you've worked in game development before, but until now the games you've made were always for other companies. So what is it like making your own game?
Yeah, I'd made games for myself, but they were kind of more for fun before. Like they were all like little free projects I was putting out. And there's definitely a lot of like really nice things about doing your own game, such as being able to make all of the decisions without needing to go through like the business side of justifying all of the steps. Like if I want representation, which is something that's really important to us and I think is evident in our game, like I don't also need to worry about bringing that up to someone and then worry I'm going to need to convince them it's a good idea. I can just do it, and that's super great. I did really like the place I was working at before, and I don't think I would have had problems bringing up some of the things, but it was also like we weren't working on something that had very much story at all. Whereas like now also I can I guess make something that really focuses on like where a lot of my passions in gaming lie. The one downside though I will say is that now I have to do everything, including parts I don't like. Whereas before, when I was on a larger team, I could sometimes be like, hey, can you do this part and I'll take this part. But yeah, overall, I've been really loving it. Just like in terms of artistic freedom, it's been really fulfilling almost.
Yeah, I feel that. I try to think like what it would be like to have to answer for things on my own podcast. And I just like, going from work where like there's like 10 layers of approval on a video to like my podcast where I get approval from my guests, I get approval from like my regulars, and I make sure that everyone's happy with things, but ultimately the final say is my own. And just that sense of control definitely just brings down stress levels a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I want to ask, I mentioned Nibbles the rabbit before. He's such a cutie patootie. I love that the game lets the player choose to interact with him and even do his daily care. Because like I have my own pet leopard gecko, and like, yeah, when Jin comes home and goes through Nibbles' cage and like feeds Nibbles and pets Nibbles and like interacts, like that's kind of my routine with Mango, my leopard gecko, every night. So I like that the game was kind of letting me do the same thing for Nibbles. And also Nibbles just looks really cute. I like that there's like little details when he like opens his eyes, when he closes his eyes, and like he comes out and he sits on the rug. I think it's adorable. I could gush about Nibbles forever.
Honestly, me too.
But Nibbles' story is also quite worrisome, with his urgent surgery being the driving force of the narrative. So I wanted to ask if Nibbles is based on a real pet and what inspired this part of the story.
Yeah. Just before I answer, did you say that your gecko's name is Mango?
Yeah.
I have a dog named Mango also. So we're both Mango pet owners.
I'm gonna need pictures later.
Yeah. At the end of the demo, there's a photo of my two dogs.
Okay, I must have missed that actually. I'll have to go back
on the screen where you're quitting. It just like in one little frame, we're like, please wish list, feed our dog, help feed our dogs. And there's like a large black dog and a little cream dog. The little cream one is Mango. I guess for anyone who ends up playing the demo, the large one is X-Ray. Now you know both of the dogs' names.
Is X-Ray Nez's dog?
X-Ray is actually my family dog. I just had a photo of both of them, and I was like, 2 dogs better than 1 dog.
For sure.
But in answer to your question, so neither Nez nor I have rabbits, so Nibbles isn't based on a pet, more so the, I guess, like love that we feel for pets. And interestingly, in the first version of the game, Jin didn't have any pet at all. And the conflict was just between, like, it was the same where like your clients came in and you had to balance their well-being, but instead of it being towards your pet, it was your own well-being on the line. You just needed money to live. And one of the things that I realized while we were like fleshing everything out was that, like, at least for me, I have a lot of an easier time being self-sacrificing than sacrificing something I love. And we felt that it would kind of give the game a different feel and a different tension if it wasn't like it is in your own interest because you're protecting something you love that's important to you, but it's also like not just your interest, you're also protecting, you know, your rabbit's life in a way that just felt like, I guess, both darker and warmer in some ways in terms of like reflecting the world and the story. Yeah, we were toying between like a couple animals and settled on the rabbit, partially because we both really love rabbits and partially because it made sense with the world building in terms of like the size of Jin's apartment and the amount of time that he's able to be at home.
Yeah, no, that I think a couple things. So I think for sure, like, it creates a sense of urgency. Like because I can understand, yeah, like the budget thing, which is in the demo, but you can't really engage with it. I think that's going to be an interesting part of gameplay that I'm excited for as well. But it does, especially for for me when I was playing it, I related to both Ocean and also Florence Sandarine.
Yeah, you could just call her Florence. It's okay.
Florence. So Ocean and Florence I related to on a personal level for different reasons, but kind of connected.
Mm-hmm.
But so when I was playing the game, I was kind of already like predisposed to like approving all surgeries, because my personal ethical thing is like, if someone wants something to do something with their body, they have the bodily autonomy to do it, assuming they have the funds, of course. So when I'm playing it, like, I'm already kind of like, okay, I'm like looking for the reasons to approve or decline a surgery. But like a player who might not be as, like, for example, a non-queer player playing the game who's never maybe had to think about bodily autonomy before, or like things like abortion or gender affirming care, stuff like things that alter your body. It gives that player, and maybe queer players too, a sense of urgency to like think like, okay, like I can't approve every surgery and I can't decline every surgery. Like, I have to think about this in a way that also gets me the money to like quote unquote win the game, to like save Nibbles, which feels like the real objective of the game almost, because like, you know, it gives you some motivation to actually like engage with I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is it gives you some motivation to engage with the ethical dilemma of the game. Yeah,
which is the core part of what like we were thinking about also, is like we need to make sure people love Nibbles, because like if you don't feel that connection there, then the conflict, which is a lot of where I think the not like necessarily interesting parts, but I guess like heart-wrenching parts of the game come into play. And so we were definitely also considering that aspect of it.
Yeah, no, I think it's really sweet, and plus it does add like a bit of like humanity to Jin. Not that Jin isn't like already like a human with like the first scene with Baron already like kind of like underscores Jin's humanity quite a bit, because he's like they're annoyed with their boss and stuff like that. But then Jin gets home and she sees her pet there, and you're just like, oh, okay, like this is a human being with a pet. Like they have a cramped apartment, they're unpacking. Oh, like they have to. Anyway, so I think it does add like just one extra layer of like humanity to the character. I'm rambling a bit, but I want to ask about the setting. So in QDRP, society lives underground in the dystopian future, and rich people live closer to the surface with the privilege of seeing sunlight, and the poor are forced far underground, only to dream of the sun and the open air. And I'm curious how you came up with such a dystopian world design, if I may, like a fucked up. It's like, and I mean that as a compliment. Like it's very fucked up.
Oh yeah, it's awful. It's terrible. I don't know exactly how we got on the idea of it being like the city is entirely indoors in this tower, but everything kind of stemmed from that idea. Like at first the building was like entirely outdoors, and then we were thinking about like, well, what might have happened in this world to have like caused everyone to live indoors like this? And obviously there's like environmental dangers. Some of them are like explained in the game, so I won't give them away, so you can go look for the little hidden nuggets when it comes out. But as part of that, we realized that it didn't make sense based on the world conditions for there to be access to sunlight in the same way we would have it, and also that like most of the building like would be like underground, wouldn't have any access at all. And also like I not always, but like whenever I'm thinking about like cyberpunk stuff, like obviously class plays a huge role in how you're like designing the world and thinking about the world, especially because so much of this is like late stage capitalism, like deep in there. And I was like, oh, it's like we could do like literal stratification, where it's like, yeah, lower class is like literally lower. And I just like I think feels very extreme in a way that I liked. I think it's one of the most explicit things in the game, and it feels like really crazy. But then also there kind of are cities that exist in our world that are similarly positioned, where like the wealthier people are like up in the hills, like looking down at like you know, the people who don't have the same amount of wealth. Yeah, when we came up with the sunlight stuff, that definitely had a big impact on how we were thinking about like life in the tower. And yeah, we don't go into a huge amount of detail on it, I think, but we've talked a lot about like how the sunlight even like moves through the space and who has access to sunlight, and how like close that is to like the original sunlight versus like filtered light. And it's all very tied up in like class, and it's become like a luxury product in a way that like I thought was really interesting. And then the last piece of it was we were thinking about how we wanted to present this world to the players from a perspective of we can't afford to show you most of it, just like literally. And also that long explanations are really boring to read. And what I was also thinking about what our world is like, and I spend I guess I think a little bit more time than the average person looking at how tech companies are destroying everything, particularly when you look at, there's this like somewhat recently coined term, shitification, which is basically talking about how like a product will come up and it'll start seeming like really good, but slowly they make it like worse and worse and worse. You're already like locked in. And then it's just really bad, and there aren't alternatives because everyone is doing this. And I was thinking about how like a lot of the times like people I know just see this as life. They don't see it as like weird or dystopian and just like the world we live in. And I was thinking like, yeah, probably the characters who inhabit this world also, this is just the world they live in. They don't see it as like a bad place. They see like there's the parts they like and the parts they don't like, but in a way that's probably more like annoying than like, existential. And that played a part in how we wanted to depict things. So a lot of like details you can only find out through conversation, because we will only talk about something if it's relevant to like a conversation, or if it makes sense with like an action that's happening. And what I actually realized a few weeks ago, this means you can actually accidentally, or I guess possibly intentionally, skip over huge world building sections when playing the game, if you don't like really engage with it, which I think is fine. I don't think you need to know it to play the game. I just think it makes things a little more interesting and fun. But then on the other hand, you're kind of like rewarded for taking that extra step, that inquisitive nature in conversations when you're learning more about the characters you're speaking with also learning more about this world you're inhabiting. Because the characters who live in it don't really have a reason to be explaining it. That's just what their life is like.
No, I think it's seeped into the narrative and the character development in a very clever and natural way. And it did make me want to like dig into the little bits of not just the world too, but the characters and their backstories. Like I wanted to exhaust every dialogue option. And then right before our interview, I wanted to go back and I saw there were other achievements that I didn't get. And I didn't have time to finish, but I saw that there's achievements for denying surgeries, and I tried vehemently, and I feel really awful. I felt so dirty doing this, but I tried to deny Ocean his surgery, which I don't agree with ever.
Yeah, we actually don't have an achievement for that one.
No, and then I found out after the fact that I'm just an awful person.
Oh, no worries. But like part of the reason I did that is because like it's purposefully written to be awful, because it's supposed to be, I mean, in my mind, you're picking that because like, I don't know why anyone would pick that unless they inherently have some kinds of issues. So it's supposed to be like the game is yelling at you. It's supposed to be not fun. Like very purposefully. And I was like, I'm an achievement hunter, and I know a lot of other people are, and I'm like, I don't want them to be yelled at to get this achievement. It's not there for like completion. It's there because the only other option would just not have it be an option in the game, and it felt like better to have the game yell at you than just not have it at all.
No, I love that. I think as far as demos go, it was a very good sampling of what I think the rest of the game will be. In fact, like I knew I was coming up on the end. I was like, okay, there's probably going to be 2 or 3 clients that you interview. Like it's like a good rule of 3. You get a good taste of everything. But I was very sad when the demo was over. I was like, where's the rest of I know you're still making it, but I was like, where's the rest of the game? I need to save nibbles first off. But second off, like I really liked each ethical question, because even though as a human, so it does actually, that's why I like the game. Like I like it for a number of reasons, but the reason I really like it is it forces me to think with that ethical question of like, so like my whole life I've been like, no, if someone wants a surgery, they should be allowed to get that surgery, because most surgeries that people really seek out generally have a lower regret rate than say like a knee replacement or a hip replacement. So I was trying to play the game as if, because I know Ekami, when she played the game, she didn't approve Florence's surgery, and the game rewards you for that as well. So I was like, well, I want to try it the other way. First off, to see what happens, but second off, because on one hand, I relate to her. I'm a trans woman whose voice doesn't pass in the traditional sense, and so I've always had some voice dysphoria around it. And she's also a talk show host, like she runs a podcast. So I was like, well, I would want that surgery first off, but also if she says she wants it, even though she clearly shouldn't get it because of like reasons that she needs to come to on her own, but it's your job to just, anyway, I like that it made me confront that dilemma, because it makes me go, well, I would just checkbox everyone. It's not about the money for me, even though it does benefit Nibbles. Anyway, I'm rambling now, but I really, really like that about the game. And I just wanted to say that to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we planned each character with like, I guess like a couple different like themes or things that we wanted to hit. Like each character is like 2 or 3 like core ideas behind them. And for Florence, I mean, I feel like it's pretty evident, but like I guess very mild spoiler warning. But like we wanted it to be like someone who on the surface seems like a very easy yes, but then you realize that she's not actually there because she wants to be at all. I think that can in some ways make the decision harder. Most of the time when I've been watching people play, if she confesses like her actual past and what's happening with her, which like you have to kind of like build to that level of trust throughout the conversation, most of the people will say like, I can't recommend this. Like this clearly like you might be saying that this is what you want, but like through everything else, it feels like it's not. But there was one person who was actually like, no, I need the money for my rabbit, which I thought was very interesting. Because I mean, yeah, that's the question the game is like asking you. And they're like, well, at the end of the day, like she is still saying that she wants it, even though she's made it clear a lot she isn't. So it's like, yeah, like where is that line?
I just like that the game lets you explore that choice. Because it would be very easy for you to just design the game to like lead people, and maybe you are still in the process of doing that. And the game is obviously the demos early on in the game, but I like that the game is like it's not leading you towards one choice in terms of theme. It's more like asking the question and letting you explore the answers to that question through the gameplay. And I think it's really, really, really clever.
That is exactly what we're going for. So the way that Ocean returns in the demo, all of the clients return, and they basically tell you like how what you decided impacted them, whether you recommended them or not. And that was really important to us from the beginning, that like we give you all of the options and then you face the consequences. And sometimes they may not be what you expected. I think this actually happened in Akami's playthrough, but when you're telling Florence, no, don't get the recommendation, don't get the procedure, you're not recommending it. If you don't do like the best job at convincing her, she'll still go through with it. She shows up at the clinic and you're like, what are you doing here? So
yeah.
It's like, it's also, I guess like consequences sometimes in subtle ways, like times when you might not even realize you were making like such important choices.
Yeah, no, I love that. We've touched on it quite a bit, but I do have one kind of very long-worded question here that I did send you in advance that's about this. And I guess I'll ask it anyway, because maybe there's more to it than what we've kind of touched on a little bit. But because like limitless body mods, where you can just like walk in and get a gender-affirming surgery, and it costs a reasonable amount, and you know, you walk out that day, you recover at home. It's like, I think the longest recovery time was like 3 days for Ocean, at least in the demo. It's like a dream come true, especially for queer people.
Yeah.
This might be TMI for a lot of people, but this is a queer podcast, and I've had vaginoplasty, and that recovery, I didn't really read too much into what the recovery was, aside from like, you have to dilate and you have to do all these other things, but I didn't like look too closely into it. I just knew, even from a young age, I knew I had the wrong parts down there. But that recovery was so, like, I did it in the winter. I had nowhere to kind of escape to. Like, it's like a full-time job of recovery, and it like really messed with me. So anyway, that's all the context to say is like a 3-day recovery for any kind of gender-affirming surgery sounds like bliss. So, but also like when I applied for my surgery, like I was at the mercy of money people. I was at the mercy of OHIP that approved it. And then I was at the mercy of GRS Montreal, who were like, oh, well, if you're too fat or you're too heavy or you're, you know, there's like many reasons why we can't approve this surgery. And it's just kind of like really disturbing to me on a fundamental level that they can just like, anyone at any point can just say, you can't have this for X reason. We don't care about how you feel. And anyway, so I've kind of touched on this already, but playing this demo gave me a very different perspective to put me in the shoes of the people that are like making those choices. And so I'm curious how you've talked about this a little bit, but how are you balancing the struggle for bodily autonomy and the power given to the player?
Yeah, so when we were coming up with the idea of the game, one of the core themes that we had like thought about and we're kind of like working out of, I really like working around themes. There's a lot of them in the game if you haven't played the demo yet. And it was how others influence your perception of yourself, and then by extension, how do they control it? And like part of the reason that the first client you meet is trans is because like immediately that was like the first thing I thought about when we touched on this. A lot of like my dysphoria comes from how I am imagining people perceive me, and also how I like express myself. I'm like always like thinking about like how does this read, and so there's definitely like I think that aspect of it where like if you know it's there, you can see that really heavily in the game. But in terms of like the power between like Jin, who is kind of like the decision maker, and the client, like if you go through it, you realize that Jin actually doesn't have as much power as it kind of seems, because you're giving a recommendation, but you can't really control clients' actions. So Ocean, for example, who is the trans mask character, if you don't recommend them, he will go get a procedure somewhere else. There is no option in the game where this isn't happening. He just goes to somewhere else. It's a little more expensive, but he gets it done. And same thing for Florence, like you're giving her your opinion, but as I mentioned before, if you do a poor job of convincing her, she's still gonna come to get the procedure. And this is also reflected to like with the other clients where not all of them will always like directly oppose you, but a lot of the time like you can give them your reason and they won't agree with you. I think that was like an important part that this is just one clinic of like many in this world, and you are giving a recommendation, not like a seal of approval, I suppose. So yeah, that was definitely a large part of it when we were thinking about it. But another thing is that like there's the capitalist angle where you're also there as a salesperson. And I think this will feel even more evident once we add the upselling section in, which will hopefully be in the next demo update sometime between now and May, where you are actively trying to also sell more things if you recommend. And so I think that puts a different spin on it that way, where suddenly this isn't like as much of a medical consultation as this is you're walking into a car dealership. It was really important to us that sometimes you just can't convince people of some things, that like they are their own characters, regardless of your opinion. And our last client, who I won't say too much about, but if you want to see a very early rough version from like this was like an early prototype of the game, I made just like a text-based story on itch.io. It's called New Eyes, I believe. And that actually features a character who will probably be our last character, and or our last client, I should say. And they actively are like, why are you here? Like, who are you to get to decide if I have this or not? And they're kind of pushing back against the entire premise of the game in that scene. And so it was definitely something we were thinking about from the beginning, because that was written like almost before anything else. In terms of like the, I guess also dichotomy of it being like very easy to access healthcare, but still very difficult. It is the future. I feel like some things should be better. And so when I was writing like about, the ease of changing things, I was like, this is like great, because not everything is always bad. And I also feel like there can be good things and bad things and vice versa. Even though the options have gotten better, there's still parts of the process that are like awful. Like in an ideal world, Ocean wouldn't need to meet with Jin at all. And I feel like Ocean kind of reflects that a little bit in a lot of like their discomfort at the beginning. he says a lot like, why do you need to know this about me? Like, if you ask about his job, like, it's not important to why we're here at all. Like, I'm getting something very simple and basic. Like, why are you questioning me on this even? And I guess subtly in that way was hoping players would also think about like, oh yeah, like, why do I need to check in? Like, obviously everything here seems fine. And then once you start getting to know Ocean on a personal level, and he also sees you as a person, that's when you can like talk to them. But I feel like at that point, it's like not even an interview anymore. You're just chatting with someone and getting to know them. And it almost the part where this is all for a procedure like fades away. And yeah, that was also kind of like intentional, where it's like you can still have the opportunity to learn about this person, but like you didn't need to have this, like this meeting didn't need to happen in this place, for example. Yeah, I guess it's now my turn to apologize for rambling.
No, you're here to be interviewed. If I'm rambling, I think that makes me the poor interviewer if I'm just talking the whole time. But no, I love what you've done with it. And when you said that about Ocean, I was like, you're right. Like, Ocean really doesn't want to be interviewed. It's very clinical for him. And then as you like just start to like relate to him, he like opens up more. At least when I played through, he came back trying to sell me coffee. I think it was, it was herbal tea. It was the herbal tea that he's trying to sell me. So I do like that too, that the characters come back. And I like that. I do like that at the end of the day, like your check mark kind of means nothing to most of the characters. And I don't want to spoil too much and get too far into like what you have planned for the rest of the game, and because I want people to also just enjoy the game and the surprising element of it, because like if sometimes I need to hear something spoilery to get me into a game or get me into a story. Like what Ekami told me was kind of spoilers for the demo, but then I was like, oh, but I got to play that now. But if I could like recommend the game without telling people anything about it, like I think the surprise factor is what makes it most exciting, is like you don't know what's kind of around each corner. Every playthrough is different. But I do have a bit of a spoilery question, and I was kind of curious what other queer characters you're interested in including in the full build.
Yeah, I think as seen in the demo, diverse representation is very important to us, particularly like intersectional representation. That being said, most of our characters are currently queer, some more explicitly than others. And the rest of the characters who we're including are also going to be queer. But we try to show that not only in like, because sometimes it's hard to explicitly show that every character is queer. Most characters don't have any reason to be talking about like their gender or romantic pursuits with the protagonist Jin. But I think that a lot of the stories they have, or sometimes even their perspectives and the way they describe things, we really try and bring in like queer themes and queer perspectives in like how they talk and think of things, even, especially, or I was going to say especially, but I don't think especially, I think for everyone. Yeah, I would say overall the game is very saturated with queerness. As I guess like a teaser for future characters, we're going to have a character who their community is very important to them. It means a lot to them, and it impacts their happiness, their expression, their decisions in a way that like I think is found like more in queer communities often than other communities. We have a character who touches more on like I guess like feeling like othered in the workplace, and also like a little bit on disability, which like when I think like when viewed through a queer lens can like feel different and unique in a lot of ways. And then our last character, as I mentioned, is the one who is like kind of upset that this interview is a thing that has to happen at all, and kind of like pushes back against the whole process in a way that's both very sorry, what's the word? Which is very self-actualizing and very like radical. in a way that, like, I mean, I'm writing also everything from a queer perspective. So from my point of view, like, it's all like filtered through that, but also like intentionally, like, I think choosing themes I often see or want to see in queer stories, or when I see them in other things, I'm like, oh, if you like tweak this a little bit here, this could be like a very queer perspective. So that's, I guess, the sneak preview of what's coming.
I like that most of your characters sound like they're queer coded, like you'd find in like a 90s Disney villain. But also, like, at the end of the day, they are still queer, even if it's not explicit. Like, you know, deep down, like, there's queerness, like, throughout the entire story. And I do see that a lot into. And also, I find it interesting that it's very thematically similar in a lot of ways to, like, this dystopian future with, like, found family and queer characters and just, like, queerness kind of permeating. Is I've interviewed previously, and I've talked about their games before, is Rocket Adrift's Psychroma. And that seems, they're also from Toronto. I just think it's very interesting that Torontonians really like to talk about the dystopian future. I wonder what that says about Torontonians, who have it pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah, maybe we're looking over at like what could be, and we're just like imagining it worse.
Yeah, it's for sure. We're definitely looking south of the border right now, and I'm sure this game predates a lot of the stuff going on south of the border, but it is like it's just like a stone's throw away from like total chaos. So maybe we're seeing it in real time, but I hope not.
Yeah, me too.
So this is kind of like not for the podcast, but I just want to get a sense on where you are for time and how you feel, because there was another question that you said you didn't want to answer, only because like it was going to be very in depth, and I
just don't think it's that interesting. No? I mean, I could tell you for fun, no worries.
What other visual novels have you played before, and how have they influenced QDRP?
So I guess, like, full disclosure, I actually haven't played that many what I think people would call like traditional visual novels, but I do personally have a much broader view. And incorrect, like if you look at any definition of visual novel, absolutely incorrect view of what a visual novel is. But I would consider like those QTE games, like the Quantic Dream games, to be visual novels. I'd consider some point and clicks like Disco Elysium, which is an RPG. That, to me, that's a visual novel. I can't explain exactly how I delineate in my head, but it's something about like the way you're engaging with it and what kind of choices you make. And also then I have some kind of arbitrary line where like, this is basically a mini game versus like, this is gameplay, which is unfair, and please don't quiz me about it. Most of the actual visual novels I've played are like small games on itch. There's tons of them. I do not remember most of their names, but just like very personal, intense works of art, which is I enjoy, which I've enjoyed a lot and definitely have impacted me, but I can't like trace the through line as neatly. In terms of what has inspired me, I actually really dislike Detroit Become Human, and I wrote an essay for school about how much I hate it, but I did really like how it would ask you to like make decisions and how it would then show you the repercussions of those decisions. Even though a lot of the story and characters are lacking in many ways, I thought those aspects of the gameplay were well done, and the game felt like it really reacted to you in a way I really liked, and I was like, okay, great, I want to take that but put it into something better. And then another thing was, I mentioned Disco Elysium before. I played it when we had already, I think, somewhat started development, but it did also impact how I thought about certain things and characters. I also just think it's impossible to play that game without it impacting you quite a bit. And then lastly, I haven't mentioned yet, but we're writing the game in a narrative scripting language called Ink, which is developed by Inkle, who are the makers of many games such as 80 Days, Sorcery, Heaven's Vault, Highland song Overboard. Very recently, I think they came out with Expelled, and they have these incredible GDC talks about they're not like how to use ink, but they're kind of like how their own design perspective like combines with ink and how they make games. And there's a lot in there about like making the world responsive, about like how you present choices to players, when you present them. There's a really great one about like writing dialogue, and definitely like a combination of all of those and also like playing their games and seeing those things in action was really inspirational, more on the game design front. And then yeah, for the story itself, I think that probably came more from various media than any specific like game. But actually, one of the things I really like about Hypnospace Outlaw, which is absolutely not a visual novel, that's one I will fold on, is that even when you are not engaging with them, all of the characters will continue living their lives. And that really helps make them feel real, because they'll do things completely outside of you. Some of their actions are results of your actions, but a lot of the time they're just like doing their own things. Like they don't revolve around you. And that definitely was something that I really, really liked about that game and brought into my character writing for this game, I think, where obviously it's more related in this game since you interact with the characters in a very specific environment. They come back to tell you about how that went, again, in your environment. But a lot of the times, like, their decisions aren't about you, or they're influenced by things not connected to you. They have their own lives that are impacting them, and stuff like that.
That's fair. I mean, visual novels aren't always my most favorite kinds of games to play. But like any book, for example, or to be honest, any game, regardless of genre or format, like I've got to be interested in the subject matter. So I think that's usually what calls to me anyway. And your visual novel called to me like this. And once I started playing it within like 30 minutes, like within not 30 seconds too, that's a bit like too quickly, but within 5 minutes, I was pretty hooked into the story. But then I really liked your point about games like Quantic Dream games, like Detroit Become Human, being visual novels. And I think I see what you're getting at there. Like no one would ever call them a visual novel, but I think the thing that people like about games like that and Life is Strange, and that's why I think I like Life is Strange because it's a visual novel with a little bit more like I can walk around the world a little bit more, I guess, is what I like about it.
So. I think I would also call it a visual novel, except for that there's that scene where you have to like go around, pick up bottles or something like that. And I know infuriating mini games are part of visual novels, but that one got me a little too hard. And I was like, this doesn't count anymore. It's just here to torture me.
I remember that. And in fact, I forgot about it until you said anything, and then I got like the flashbacks. But I play lots of games too, where the mini games, like I'm a big fan of Pokemon, and I love Scarlet and Violet, but the sandwich mini game can go away. So there's like elements to it, and the reason too that I play Life is Strange is like, and I was playing Lost Records, the new game from that dev team, and
how is it?
I really like it. And for listeners too, I did do an episode on it. If you want to go back and check it out, I don't have the episode number handy, but it was at the beginning of March, I think, or maybe late February. But anyway, I really like it. But at a certain point, there's a scene early on in the game where you're in the character's bedroom and you're kind of walking around and exploring. And it's just kind of, the game's kind of showing you like, hey, this is how you engage with the world. Like it's point and click, but you can walk around. And then there's like a bunch of things you can find that don't feel like they add anything to the story or character development. Like obviously that room is there to teach you things. It's there to like serve as like some backstory. There's like a secret like bisexual box that you can find, and it's not like very clear it's bisexual, but me being a bisexual and a queer person, I was like, oh, okay, like I get why that box is there and why she's like a little scared of her mom finding it, right? Like there's a novel in there. I think there's like maybe a little journal. But at a certain point when I was walking around this room, the completionist in me didn't want to miss anything. And I think that's where like a visual novel would have been almost better to play this narrative, and for that moment anyway, because at least like I would have been like, okay, like I don't feel like the game's going to give me a lot of it through text, the information that I need, and then I can move on. And then I just found it kind of like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like it's like a chore. But the rest of the game is great. It's just only half the game so far. So I'm just not sure where it ended. Didn't feel like a midpoint. So I'm just like a little concerned about where it's kind of going next, and where it ended too. Like it wasn't the kind of twist I thought would happen. So, but if anyone is listening to this, or you in particular have seen the show Yellow Jackets, it's very similar. It's like a video, like an early 90s, intercut with present day. You know, if something bad happened back then, you're trying to kind of figure out like what happened then and how it's impacting now, and like you're going back and forth. And that was the other thing too. It was too much of a visual novel. I guess now that you've got me thinking about it, and I'm rambling, but the game intercuts a little bit too much with the past and present. Like you're about to get into like a very interesting part of the story, and then it moves you to the present as like a framing device. And that felt almost like too visual novel-y for me versus like just like letting me find stuff on my own. So it's a fine line to kind of walk for sure.
Yeah, I haven't played it because I was asking how it is, but that sounds like a pacing issue.
For sure, yeah. What I do like about it, though, and I'm not trying to disparage the game, it was made in Montreal. I didn't know Don't Know It had a Montreal team, and they were the ones developing it, which is really cool. So, yeah, I wondered if you had any final thoughts about QDRP or for listeners.
I guess, yeah, something that like I feel like we touched on, but haven't gone in depth into is that like it has been a real joy to make it. Like as a first project, like you're like as a new studio, like you kind of never, or like it's very unlikely for it to like do incredibly well. And so we decided to make something that we really cared about instead of chasing market trends. And being able to work on art that's really meaningful to you and then give it out to your community and see people get it, like they understand what you were going for, they see it the way that you saw it, like it's hitting. It's just been so exciting, and just even working on it is so fun, and I'm so blessed to have Nez working on it with me. We just like are in each other's heads, like we understand what the other person's thinking, and I feel like that shows in some ways, like with how you were saying the like art style blends with the writing and stuff. And we talked so long about all of the different expressions we're going to have. I don't know if you noticed while playing, but there's actually currently 195 sprites in the game.
I didn't notice that, but that's a lot.
Yeah. With all of the character expressions, rough back of the napkin math, I think we'll probably have about 300 for the full game, maybe more. Wow. Yeah, we really, I guess, want it to impact and land a certain way, as you could tell by us, like, you know, going into like that much detail with, I guess even small things, like very small, sometimes differences in expression, just because like the sentiment is slightly different. And it seems to have been working. So that's been really great and exciting. Yeah, I guess coming up, we'll probably have one more demo update, and then another one for Next Fest, which will be in June. Next Fest with our final demo version. So you can look out for that. With the release sometime after that. And yeah, if you want to follow along with how production is going, I've been doing social media on top of everything, and it got to be a little bit too much recently, so I'm not posting as much as I used to, but you can look at our old like TikToks or YouTube shorts. I'm really bad at posting on Blue Sky, but if you ask me nicely, I'll post more. And we do have a newsletter which has and also will have some like more interesting behind the scenes stuff. Also, if you're interested in playtesting, we'll be reaching out to there. And if you're interested in this game, if you played it and you like the demo, the best way to support us is to wishlist it on Steam. This is due to the evil Steam algorithms, which I unfortunately must treat as my overlord. However, if you hate Steam, we also have the demo up on itch.io, also called Quality Dreams Reasonably Priced. The WebGL version is a couple updates back, but and might slightly be broken in one spot with the audio. I didn't super check it because the downloadable versions are fine and up to date. And actually, there is an extra scene in the itch.io version, not on Steam. If you want to try that out and give us feedback on it. Yeah, I think that's everything I could possibly plug.
No, thank you so much for doing that. And it does answer my next question, like, where can people find you? I really do love the YouTube content you've been doing. And I will say, like, as someone who's been trying to also post, like, promote the podcast on social media, like, social media is harder than making the content. It's just, like, so exhausting. And you're like,
yeah.
It's like I have to feel like I have to reverse engineer what people might like. But I'll just say, like, what you have been posting, even if it is taxing, it's very interesting content, and I've enjoyed just my partner and I sat there binging through your YouTube shorts, and we thought they were very charming, very different too. Like, one, you're like asking someone for, like, you're asking people for, like, oh, what should we write here for the dialogue, and the next you're like, here's all the, like, different versions of Ocean. And also too, you mentioned the facial expressions, and I didn't count the number of sprites or notice how many there were, but I did notice how expressive they were. It doesn't go unnoticed. I thought, especially Baron was like, I could get the, like, vibe of, like, okay, I can see why Jane might find Baron a little annoying. He's got this look on his face that's just like, anyway, I won't be too mean or disparaging, but I just, like, kind of like, oh, you know, like, he's just, like, getting under my skin. So
yeah, that was the goal. Occasionally people really like him, and I'm like, I mean, go off, but yeah, he's meant to be a bit exasperating. But, like, still in kind of like a fun, not I want to quit this sucks way. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This was so fun. I love talking about my interests, so thank you for indulging me.
It was such a pleasure having you on. I'm so excited to play the full game. I'm going to be looking forward to the next Steam Next Fest demo. I might go download the itch.io version so I can see the extra scene. I'll probably have to dig for it. But and for listeners who are listening, like, go play this game. Go play this demo. It's on Steam. It's a demo, so it's free. The game is currently scheduled, it says on Steam for Q3 2025, but it's an indie game, obviously, so I do expect my listeners to understand that, you know, delays happen. This isn't Nintendo or Xbox where they have a hard deadline and, you know, they rush their devs out. So we always like to give our friends as much time as they need on a game. And I trust this won't be rushed anyway. It's so good, and it's worth the time that it needs, however much time you need to make it. So
thanks. Yeah, hopefully, like, we have a date, and hopefully we'll be, like, within a few weeks of it, but I appreciate the no pressure comment.
I've loved everything I've played so far, and I'm really looking forward to the full game. So, and give my best to Nez, and thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you also.
And that just about wraps up this week's show. Thanks to your avatars for joining me for another episode of your Queer Video Game Podcast. If you've made it this far into the episode, I really appreciate you taking the time to support queer-made content, which is a big deal. If you want to support the show, it would be really great if you could leave a rating, review, or comment on your preferred podcast platform. I welcome you to check out the website, trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word. That's trueavatarspodcast.com. You can also find the show on Blue Sky, Threads, and YouTube under the handle @trueavatars, all one word, and on Instagram under trueavatars. Importantly, if you or anyone you know is queer and involved with video games in some way, please don't be shy. I would love to hear from more queer voices in video games. Your voice is unique, invalid, and worth sharing with the world. And if you don't want to be on the show or know anyone who's interested, but you know about a cool queer video game or games industry story that's queer related, please let me know. The show's official email is trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. That's trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. You can also feel free to reach out via the website or the aforementioned social media pages. Things are tough out there, and queer people need to stick together when we can. Bye, True Avatars. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Take care and stay safe.